I'm going to talk about storytelling. So first, let me tell you a story about what I do. I'm a neuroscientist at the Florey. And, you know, the whole idea, the whole concept of command neurons, that's neurons that collateralize within the central nervous system to drive more than one type of functionally or anatomically distinct sympathetic outflows, is widely invoked in the literature. And the reason it's widely invoked is, oh man, that's just... No, I can't carry on with that. That's excruciating. Let's start again. Brain cells are close together, incredibly numerous, all look pretty much the same, and are incredibly squishy. These problems make the brain hard to study. They're not grand philosophical problems, they are practical problems, and it makes my job difficult. Now, the area of the brain that I try to study despite this is the brainstem, and this is a very ancient area at the base of your skull here above your spinal cord. And from here you do things like regulate your blood pressure, generate the rhythm of your breathing, control your temperature. Some people would call this housekeeping, but it's why you aren't dead at this moment. One of the most important things this brain region does is coordinate, and I'll give you an example. If you see a bear or another large alarming stimulus, then your higher brain regions are going to do something great. They're going to make you afraid. And in terms of evolution, that's a very sensible response to the bear. Your brainstem is going to do something equally fantastic. It is going to speed up your heart. At the same time, it's going to get your heart pumping faster. At the same time, it's going to open up the blood vessels in your muscles so that you are better equipped to either flee from or fight that bear, though if it is a bear, I recommend that you flee. How this coordination is accomplished is poorly understood, and it fascinates me. The reason it's poorly understood is because of the technical limitations I talked about at the start, that brain cells are close together, squishy, difficult to study. When we look, here's what we know. When you look at the brain cells in the brainstem, most of them seem to have only one job. They only go from the brainstem to heart or brainstem to a blood vessel. What we think is that there are brain cells that do more than one job, that branch and go to more than one place. And if those cells exist, they would be exciting because they wouldn't be involved in simply switching an organ on or off. They would be involved in coordinating more than one organ, and that's cool. No one in 150 years of looking, I haven't been looking for 150 years personally, no one in 150 years of looking has ever seen a brain cell like this because of the squishy brain problems. I'm very excited because I think that's about to change. And it's about to change because of a technique in neuroscience called optogenetics. And optogenetics is really cool for scientific reasons, but it's also really cool because I get to come here to an audience full of people and say the following sentence, right? We are making brain cells sensitive to laser light using viruses. All right? There are a lot of cool words in that sentence. So what we're doing is we're using a virus as a delivery system for genes. So what we do is we targetedly infect the neurons we suspect of being the coordinating ones. And when the virus goes in there, it causes expression of a light-sensitive protein all over the surface of that cell. What that means is that if we can get a fiber optic cable and deliver light through that fiber optic cable to near that cell, we can switch it on and off at will. Pretty cool. And that's awesome, right? And it's awesome in both the contemporary and original senses of awesome. It's awesome in the original sense because I really believe we're going to use this technique to learn something fundamental about one of the most ancient brain structures in our heads. And it's awesome in the contemporary sense because we're making brain cells sensitive to laser light using viruses, and I got to come here and tell you that that's my job. Thanks very much. So I think we did better when I started again, didn't we? So why is that? Just to clarify at the start, I was telling you about the same stuff, but it was a bad talk. It was a bad story. I'm going to talk about storytelling a little bit today. And specifically with regards to storytelling, I'm going to talk about storytelling in this kind of context where you're talking about your professional life. Might be science, might be something else, and you're talking to people who may or may not know what you do, but you have to convey some ideas to them anyway. And I would argue that the first 45 seconds of my talk were difficult and not a good talk because they were not good story. And it wasn't that the language was inaccurate. It's not that I'm not comfortable talking about it. I actually love talking about it. And it's not that the information was inaccurate. The problem with it is, frankly speaking, you. because you are the wrong audience for the talk. Let's scratch that. You're perfect. The talk is, the story was wrong. That's better. So the story was wrong. I didn't pick the story very well. So how do we go from what I started with to what I just did, which was hopefully more engaging and got something across, and hopefully, are any of you neuroscientists? One neuroscientist. Thank you for not pointing out the fallacies in what I said. How do we go from one to the other? So you're going to write a story and you're going to deliver it as a talk. So you've got to make some decisions. And the decisions are pretty intuitive, and a lot of this is going to be formalizations of things that I think are kind of common sense, but I'm a scientist and I like formalizations, and they're helpful to me genuinely, and I hope they're helpful for you. So you're going to decide what you're going to talk about, or put another way, how many concepts you want to convey in this presentation. You're going to talk about how much you're going to talk about it, or what level of detail is appropriate for the audience I'm going to speak to. And third, I'm going to talk about how you say it. So what are you going to talk about, how much you're going to say, and how are you going to say it? How are you physically going to deliver the words that you're going to use to convey the concepts you've decided to convey? And as Natalie foreshadowed a little bit, this is about subtraction for me. If someone says to you, I want you to give a talk about avocados, you're going to tell a story about avocados, and your starting point is going to be everything you know about avocados, and chances are that's not what will make it into your talk. And the reason that's not what's going to make it into your talk is because you have to take things out, and the most prevalent reason you have to take things out is time. If someone says, talk about avocados for 10 minutes, that immediately limits up how much information you can get in about avocados. And I bet you could fill a lecture series with information about avocados. Yes. So time is going to make you take stuff out of what you know and make a story. And that sounds bad, that sounds negative, but as Natalie suggested, paring stuff down can actually make it a lot more powerful. Creative writing types say great things like creation is subtraction and rewriting is writing, and I really think that's true. So when time makes us take stuff out of a talk, a story, how do we decide? And I have 3 things that I like to think about in this instance. The first one is purpose. Decide what the purpose, not your scientific purpose or business aim, what is your purpose in delivering this talk to this audience? And a really good guide for that is that you should be able to state that, I think, very simply. In my case, what I wanted to convey was, although neuroscience is portrayed and perceived as this grand philosophical intellectual thing, in fact, what we do day to day is deal with a very old practical problem. That's a specific title, a specific aim that I can refer to any time when I'm deciding what to cut out of my talk. If it doesn't further that purpose, gone. And your audience will thank you. They won't personally thank you because they won't know you've done it, but you will have done them a favor nonetheless. The second thing, again, pretty obvious, is audience. You have to tailor what you say to the audience you say it to. And I think when you're speaking professionally or about what you do in a job, this is actually a particularly difficult thing. I have kind of an analogy for that. So if someone says to you, what did you do this morning? You might say, well, I had breakfast, because maybe you did. But you might not stop there. You might say, oh, I went to Flinders Lane, to the place with the good smashed avocado, and they do that thing where they put cumin and coriander and a bit of nutmeg, which is weird, but it sets the whole thing off. And that's cool. That's the right response, because it's a reasonable assumption the person who asked you that question is an expert in breakfast. But if an alien asked you that question, what did you do that morning? And you start talking about coriander and cumin and avocados, you've lost them immediately. And it's not that what you're saying isn't true or engaging to someone who knows what you're talking about. It's just not the right format. So lose the details. You'd have to start with something like, human beings require sustenance in the form of carbohydrates and proteins, and I like smashed avocado for that. So when you need to cut things out your talk, there may be details that you like. We all do jobs, and we all exist in the details of our jobs, so we're comfortable talking about them, and it's very tempting to put them into a story. But they may not be appropriate to put in. So if you have a lot of purposeful information because you've decided it all meets your purpose, you need to cut something else because of time, really look at all the points, say, does this aid the understanding and enjoyment of my audience? And the answer is no, gone. And again, your audience will not personally thank you, but you have again done them a favor. And the third thing for your story to go into it is, I think, a memory aid, if you can come up with one. And this is a nice one because, well, the first 2 things are subtractive, this one is additive. A memory aid can be anything that gives you a talking point for your talk for other people. So what will they say in the pub afterwards? I selected Squishy Brains because it looks funny when it's written down. It looks funny when it's written down. When you say it in a really serious voice, it sounds funny. And it kind of drives at the center of my purpose, which was to talk about neuroscience techniques. So if you have squishy brains to talk about the center of your talk, the purpose of your talk, you throw it in, you get a reaction from the audience. The next time you throw it in, they smile again, but they also remember what the hell you're talking about, hopefully. It doesn't have to be a funny thing. It can be anything that's true or allegorical or provokes a reaction. I just do it in a flippant, hopefully funny way because I can't help but approach all aspects of my life in that way. So yeah, memory aids are great. They lend that sense of cohesion. If you start and finish with something or weave it through, that's fantastic. So that's what I want to say, purpose, audience, memory aids. And that really covers the writing-y aspect of writing and delivering your talk. So I just want to talk very briefly about how you say things. And this is really performance, and you could do seminar. There are university courses about performance. It's hard and it's a skill set. But I want to talk a little bit about it. So here are really just some pointers, I think, that you can think about while you're writing to maximize your chances of doing this. Make your talk yours. When I say make your talk yours, what I really mean is compose your talk as if you are going to say it, you personally. You know, the way you organize ideas when you write them down may well be very concise and clear, but when you actually go to say those things, you may find that the way you formulate ideas and convey ideas is completely different. And I think the best way to address that is, and this would be a piece of strong advice that I would advocate, would be try writing talks by saying them out loud. And this goes back to talking to yourself, like I was talking about earlier. If you decide roughly what you're going to talk about, just start talking. See roughly how long it is, see how long it takes you to cover particular points of focus that you want to get across, and come at it that way. What's great about, by all means, write it down afterwards so you remember the order. I mean, I've lost talks that way. But try writing it just such that you say the ideas. This is great because it gives you fluency in two things. Not only what you're going to say, but the idea of what you're going to say. You'll become good at talking around it, and that's very important. It makes you a bit more dynamic, I think. And the second thing is you get accustomed to hearing yourself speak and how you inflect and how you place emphasis. And if you can get good at doing that just off the top of your head, off the cuff, naturally, what's great about that is seamless segue. When you get nervous, and I don't know about you, but I get really nervous before I speak in front of humans. If you get nervous, if you know exactly not only what you're going to say, but you know the subject matter, you know roughly how you speak, that gives you the means to fake it for a while. Because when you land on stage and you've got butterflies and you're stressed out, all you need to do is get through the first minute, 2 minutes. And by that time you've been speaking for 2 minutes, you haven't spontaneously combusted. Your clothes haven't spontaneously flung themselves into the corners of the room and you're under the punitive gaze of the audience. It's not like that. So hopefully you relax a little bit and have a good time. Because that's the thing. If you can think about these things, deliver a good story that's comprehensible, it doesn't have too many ideas that people remember, they will enjoy you speaking to them. And if they enjoy you speaking to them, you will get to enjoy speaking to them. It's this lovely reciprocal thing. So I guess I'd just end with that, just to summarize. What goes in it, how much you're going to say about it, how you say it. The third one is very important, and I would suggest that you think about that when you're doing the other two things. Purpose, who's your audience, memory aids, and write it by speaking to yourself anywhere. Bus stop, walk around the library, walk around Hungry Jack's. Wherever you happen to be, just sit and imagine you're going to talk, and talk out loud or not, depending on how relatively comfortable you are with people thinking you're weird compared to me. So I'd really just like to end it there. Thanks very much for your attention, and I hope that was in some way helpful. Thank you.